This is Jason from MainstreamGeek.com, and you're listening to the Mainstream Geek Podcast for February 1st, 2016. Before we get started today, I just want to remind everybody to go to MainstreamGeek.com and find all the places that you can find me on the internet. Go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. That's the way I get found. That's how I can grow the show, so please make sure you go to iTunes and rate, review, and subscribe the show. Zack Snyder asked for Christopher Nolan's approval to use Batman in Batman v Superman? What's the point of this? Christopher Nolan doesn't own the character. This is nothing more than a talking point that DC knew would be picked up by bloggers. And it's working, like a charm, because I'm doing it here. But it looks like Christopher Nolan is a normal person like the rest of us, because his response was, well, we don't own these characters. When you're done making the Batman movies, someone else will. Which is a logical response, because it's true. What did Snyder think was going to happen? He would ask Nolan and his response would be, no, you can't do that? Of course not. Not only that, but what are the chances that DC and Warner Brothers would not make the movie because he said no? Of course they'd still make it. The Dark Knight Rises was never going to be the end of making Batman movies. Batman movies are the only superhero movies at this point that are hits with Warner Brothers. Not to mention the only big franchise that Warner Brothers has going on. I'm not sure if they have any other franchises actually. Besides Harry Potter, but that's over. I guess it's starting that new little Beast and Where to Find Them movie, but I've never been a big Harry Potter fan, so I don't know too much about that. Maybe they own Lord of the Rings too. I seem to feel like at the beginning of the Hobbit movies, there was a Warner Brothers logo. I don't know. I could have sworn Lord of the Rings and everything like that was owned by New Line Cinema, but maybe Warner Brothers owns New Line Cinema, because I seem to remember that there was a thing where Shazam is going to be made by New Line. I don't know. If anybody out there knows the answer to that, please just tweet me or email me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com. I don't know. So there's no way in hell that Warner Brothers would not make the movie that was going to start the DCU just because Christopher Nolan didn't want his character touched. His character. It's not his character. The DC movies at this point pretty much have to include Batman. He's the only real draw to the theater at this point. I know Superman can put some asses in the seats too. Man of Steel didn't do terrible at the box office. I don't know how well it did, but I know it was a big movie. But it wasn't as big as I think they were hoping it would be. But as far as potential good movies go, if we're being honest, movie-wise, the DC lineup is pretty weak. You've got Superman, who's only popular because he's an icon of the superhero world. There's nothing really exciting about a man who could only be killed by a glowing green rock. Don't get me wrong, I actually somewhat enjoyed Man of Steel, but it's not a movie that anyone absolutely loves. It was just an okay movie. So he's not holding the franchise together. Then you have Wonder Woman, who really, if you think about it, no one in the general public knows much about her, except that she's a superpowered woman. Think about why people are excited to see this movie. Even fanboys always say that it's time for a female-led superhero movie. That's not justification for a movie. Don't get me wrong, Wonder Woman might be a great movie, but as far as the general public, which the ugly truth is, dollars and cents is what these movies being made comes down to. We just happen to live in a time where studios usually let the creative team make the best possible movie with the material they're given. But when it comes down to dollars and cents, how many people are actually excited about seeing a Wonder Woman movie besides it being a chapter in the overall story? When you break it down, Wonder Woman is just a woman with a magic lasso that makes people tell the truth and an invisible jet that makes it so a seated woman is flying through the air. I'm sure these won't be a part of the more realistic flavor that the new DC movies are going for, but that's pretty much what Wonder Woman is. And then you have Aquaman. I've expressed my thoughts on him before. He's a guy who talks to fish. That's all he is. Nothing more, nothing less. He is a fine character. I understand his place in mythology, but he is just a guy who talks to fish. Now, they could be spinning him off differently in the movies. I don't know. But as of right now, that's all he is to me. That's all he ever will be to me until I see differently. The Flash might actually be a draw, but that's based upon how great the TV show is. I think this is going to lead to problems of its own. People who aren't into behind-the-scenes movie news, which is the large majority of the public, you have to keep that in mind. Most moviegoers are only there to see the movie. They know nothing about the making of the film, and that the movies are different from the TV show. These people are going to see the ads and the TV spots and be confused as to why the Flash on the movie screen isn't the same as the Flash that's in their living room every week. So I predict that's going to be a problem in itself when the movie comes out. And then you have the Green Lantern, who it wasn't all that long ago that had a failed movie himself. I know they're calling it the Green Lantern Corpse. to try to trick the public into thinking that this is new. But in all honesty, I feel like it's only going to trick them into thinking that this is a sequel to the movie that they hated 5 years ago, or however long ago it was. Think about it. In the Green Lantern movie, they had the Green Lantern Corps. So the title, The Green Lantern Corps, really makes it seem like this is a spin-off of that movie, a continuation of that story. No one's going to be down for that. Think about the Fantastic Four from 2015. It was bad. Trust me, I know. But even as a highly marketed reboot, the opening weekend was horrible. And the opening weekend is when people don't really know if the movie is good or bad. It should have at least had a pop that opening weekend and then a sharp fall off for how bad it was. The opening weekend should have been huge. Now, some of that was from word of mouth, but you can't seriously tell me that it had nothing to do with the bad taste that the movies from the 2000s left in everybody's mouth. It wasn't that long ago, so that was fresh in everyone's mind. No one wanted to go spend money on a Fantastic Four movie, and it just happened to be a bad movie also. You can't chalk it all up to how bad Fantastic Four was. Bad movies do well all the time. It just happened that the Fantastic Four was an exceptionally bad movie, but look at 50 Shades of Grey. Terrible movie, but it has a fan base, so it did well. So Fantastic Four should have done well at least on opening weekend before it came out how bad the movie was. Now, it didn't help that Josh Trank came out with his tweet about how the studio screwed it up and blah, 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 blah. You can go on forever about the Fantastic Four movie and where they went wrong with that. But I'm just saying, when it comes to the Green Lantern Corps, I think it's going to suffer the same fate of following up a bad movie that wasn't long enough ago for people to forget. Quick question about the Green Lantern film for any listeners out there who want to enlighten me, because I'm not sure about this one as I'm talking about it, but it comes out after both Justice League movies, right? So is he going to be part of the Justice League movies? I know they released concept art a week or so ago and he wasn't in it, so I'm not clear on if he's in the movie or not. Someone who was in that art, though, was Cyborg. He's another character that's not going to be a huge draw. This isn't race-based at all, but every time I think of this movie, it brings back memories of Shaq's movie Steel from the 90s, the Superman spin-off movie from the 90s that starred Shaq, based on the comic Steel from where Superman had died back in the 90s, and he was reincarnated as 4 different Supermen. But he was in the art, and his movie comes out after both Justice League movies too, if I'm not mistaken. DC just has a lot of ground to catch up on since they're trying to go the Marvel route with things. Marvel did it right from the start. They started with Iron Man, saw that it worked, and hinted that they intended to slowly build something big. That something big was the Avengers. DC is coming out and saying, here's everything we're doing, whether it's good or bad. And their lineup just doesn't hold the water that Marvel's does. Or it doesn't seem to, at least. I could be beyond wrong about all of this. Before Iron Man came out, I was super stoked about an Iron Man movie. They pulled that off like a champ. Same went with Hulk after the first movie in the early 2000s, which I know wasn't even canon in the MCU, but after I saw that one, I had no interest in a Hulk movie, but that really turned my view of the Hulk upside down. So much, in fact, that I want a new Hulk standalone movie. Speaking of that, hold on just a second, I have this here somewhere. I thought I printed off the... Oh yeah, okay. So, listener Trent sent me an email about why there hasn't been another Hulk movie. Apparently, Universal still owns the rights to distribution on the solo Hulk films. For those of you who don't understand what I'm talking about there, back in the day, by the day I mean 2008-ish, before Disney owned everything that Marvel did, Marvel was actually an independent studio, if you could call it that. They actually funded Iron Man with a bank loan, with hopes of making enough money to pay back the bank loan and make future movies, which happened to pay off in spades. But since they were independent, they had to release the movie through distributors, like Paramount and Universal, which are the two they used, I think. I don't think they used any other besides Paramount and Universal. And actually, I think Universal only had the Hulk. Paramount had Iron Man. I think Paramount had Thor. And I think Paramount had Captain America, the First Avenger, and Avengers. And after Avengers, that's when Disney took over. But I could be wrong about that. Let me know if I am, and I will correct myself. So Marvel can't technically release a Hulk standalone flick because of the way that the contract with Universal is worded. But Mark Ruffalo actually came out this week and said they're going to get around that by using team-up movies to give the Hulk his own story arc over the course of Ragnarok, Infinity War Part 1, and Infinity War Part 2. So through the magic of legalese, we're going to get a nice long Hulk story arc. Super side tangent on that. I think that the Hulk's arc is going to be the way that the Guardians of the Galaxy will be introduced into Infinity War. I have nothing to substantiate that, But just playing at the details in the news, it feels like that would be a solid way to have all of that come together. But anyhow, I didn't think either of those characters would be good for Marvel. I also didn't think that Thor or Captain America would make decent movies. Thor is debatable, but, Captain America is awesome. And I couldn't have been more wrong about that. So I could be wrong about the DC movies. In all honesty, I hope I am. These movies being good will help all superhero movies keep coming, because the general public doesn't really know that Marvel and DC films are different. So if there's a string of bad DC movies, the general public is going to stop going to see comic book movies, superhero movies in general. And as much money as Marvel makes off the fanboys like you and I going to movies, it's a drop in the bucket as to how much they make off your mom and your girlfriend going to see the same movie. Just keep that in mind when you're picking sides for this Marvel and DC war. Both can be good, and both should be good, because whichever way one goes, it's going to affect the other. To tell you the truth, I wonder if Zack Snyder asked Christopher Nolan's opinion on Batman's demeanor in Batman v Superman. There's a report out that now in this movie, Batman has given up on his role, his long-standing rule of not killing criminals. According to Chris Roven, one of the producers of the movie, in the same Empire article where Snyder said he asked Christopher Nolan for permission to use Batman, Batman is not giving people a chance. He's more than a vigilante. He has become not only the cop, if you will, he has also become the jury and executioner. So, does that mean Batman's going to kill people in Batman v Superman? I hate to say it's a bit out of character, but this little tidbit got me a little excited. Not that I think Batman should kill people, but what we've seen of the story so far in the trailers and other material, this kind of fits. We saw that the Robin costume in the Batcave looks like it was vandalized by the Joker, ostensibly. So we can only assume at this point in the game that Jason Todd has been killed. And can we talk about what hidden side story that means? If Jason Todd has had a chance to become Robin and die like he did in the comics, then that means Dick Grayson has already been Robin, quit, and become Nightwing. Is Nightwing in this movie? How many fucking characters are going to be in this movie? If that's a piece of news that I missed, please tweet me at Mainstream Geek and tell me. But that would be a pretty cool little piece of a story that no one seems to be talking about. But we see that Jason Todd has likely been killed by the Joker, just from the trailer, no confirmed info. So a hardened, no-nonsense kind of Batman would kind of make sense. What it would also kind of clear from the trailers is that rifle he's carrying when Wonder Woman shows up. A lot of people had a problem with that because Batman doesn't use guns, though I never thought it was a gun. It almost looks like some sort of high-tech laser gun to me. What I always assumed was happening there was that he had a type of kryptonite gun he developed. Ugh. Just saying that sentence out loud as a grown man makes me feel so retarded and like I need to rethink my life. But he had a kryptonite gun developed to confront Superman with to level the playing field, and it would be what he's going to use during the Zod fight. By the way, I'm not going to call that thing Doomsday anymore. I refuse to. That is Zod, and I really don't care if they call him Doomsday. Doomsday is such a better character than that. So, to me, I'm going to try to call him Zod from now on. Doomsday is going to slip out of my mouth, I know, but I'm going to try to call him Zod from now on. My hope is, with it being a kryptonite gun instead of an actual rifle, that is if I'm right, it doesn't turn out to be one of those situations where before Batman can get the shot off on Zod somehow, it's knocked out of his hand, and the fight scene turns into a scramble for each of them to try to get a hold of the gun to take a shot at him. That just seems like it's such an overused trope in movies, doesn't it? The only thing that would make that worse is, I don't know, what possibly could make a more played out scenario than that? I know. And if this happens, I'm going to have an audible eye roll for the whole movie theater. What if they're all trying to get the gun while fighting Zod, and Superman offers to hold off Zod while they get the shot off, sacrificing himself for the greater good? And that's what makes Batman realize that Superman isn't the enemy after all. I can feel myself just wanting my money back, just playing out that imaginary scenario in my head. So anyhow, Batman might be killing fools in Batman v Superman, and I'm actually okay with that turn. It gives us a side of Batman we haven't seen before, and it gives him something to grow back into, which is the original Batman, where he has a sense of compassion and he doesn't think it's right to kill. So it kind of gives him an arc that he could potentially develop into. What do you think? Was Snyder announcing that he had Nolan's approval all part of the marketing? Am I wrong with the DC universe not really having a strong audience draw beyond Batman? Will the weak characters in the DC universe surprise everyone? Let me know by emailing me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com or find me on Twitter or Facebook at Mainstream Geek. Let's see, what else we have here? The Super Bowl is this weekend. And even though I like a good Super Bowl / drinking party, my favorite part is always the new footage we see in the form of trailers during the Super Bowl. This year is going to be no different. Paying a whopping $5 million for a 30-second ad during the Super Bowl, which is a record, by the way. I don't know why it's news that it's a record every year, because every year it seems like they say that the amount that people are paying for the Super Bowl is a record. But it's worth the money, because if you want to have your commercial seen, the Super Bowl is the place to do it. Because I think it's like there's over 100 million people watching the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday. It's pretty much Christmas, and the TV is a Christmas tree in America. I don't even like football, and I watch the game just because it's what's happening that day. It's the pop culture thing of the day to do. That's what everybody's going to be talking about the next day. They're going to be talking about the commercials. They're going to be talking about the game. They're going to be talking about anything funny that happened, anything that, say that Janet Jackson shows her tit on screen. That's what people are going to be talking about the next day. So you don't want to miss that. So everybody watches the Super Bowl. Now, at the time of recording, this is a list of trailers that have been announced for the Super Bowl. They might be adding some. I don't know. I'm not privy to that kind of information. I'm just a guy from Ohio who knows very little about anything. Of course, we're going to get Deadpool. It comes out 5 days after the big game. So it's crunch time for the marketing on that movie. And they know it's crunch time. They have a captive audience to catch those last few oddballs that somehow haven't been hooked by the awesome marketing for this movie. They pretty much covered every base and demographic in the marketing for this movie. This week, they had an ad come out that was a PSA to give yourself an exam for testicular cancer. If you haven't seen it, go find it. It's hilarious. They've also had recut trailers to make it seem like it's a romantic comedy that's coming out on Valentine's Day weekend. There have been commercials where Deadpool breaks the fourth wall like he does in commercials and interviews little kids about the superheroes they're dressed up as on Halloween. They've pretty much hit everyone, so I'm pretty sure that in this full court press they're going to be doing, which I know is a basketball term, but I'm terrible with sports analogies. We're going to get something that seals the deal, which I'm guessing is going to be something crazy awesome. I don't know anyone who doesn't want to see this movie at this point. I will be doing a movie review for Deadpool on my other podcast, Completely Straight, if you're interested in checking that out. We already did a review for The Force Awakens, and it was pretty well received, so we're going to be doing those for other movies in the future. But we're going to be doing this one in the same fashion that we did with The Force Awakens. We're going to see the movie on February 13th, and then go into the studio and record a group recording with everybody who wants to see the movie. So if you want to check that out or the Star Wars review out, go to CompletelyStraight.com and make sure you're subscribed there so that you get it as soon as it comes out. Obviously, we're going to be getting Batman v Superman, a new trailer, probably some new footage. That's only a month and a half away from the movie, so they've really got to start pushing this movie down people's throats too. We'll be getting X-Men Apocalypse. Meh. I like the X-Men movies just fine. But, there's nothing in this movie that seems exciting to me. I could be wrong, and I hope I am, but this one doesn't seem all that exciting to me. We're going to be getting a Captain America Civil War trailer. New footage from that. Should be awesome. And that Warcraft movie, that silly Warcraft movie that's coming out. Is it just me? I've never played the game Warcraft before, so I'm probably speaking out of school here. But does the trailer seem like they just made a gritty Shrek reboot to anyone else? This movie isn't in my wheelhouse, and it's not for me. I'm sure it is for some of you, but it looks bad. The special effects look like something out of the Chronicles of Narnia movies. I'm really over these fantasy movies where it's just super apparent that they were made on a soundstage in front of a green screen. I know that for movies like that you have to have green screen stuff, but these movies look like they're completely green screen. There's nothing real in the movies that the actors are interacting with. If you're going to do that, you need to have the A-team on this shit, because these fantasy movies always have this slightly fake look to it. I don't know what it is about it, but it doesn't come out looking like the people are actually anywhere. It's just very apparent in these movies that they are in front of a green screen. That's all I have to say about that one. But the noteworthy announcements that were made just earlier today, when I'm recording this, we're going to be getting a trailer for the 5th Jason Bourne movie. I love me some Jason Bourne, so that should be pretty cool. I don't have any info on it except that it's going to be a Bourne movie with Matt Damon, and I'm super high on Matt Damon ever since The Martian. But apparently, we're also going to be getting a new look at Independence Day Resurgence, which if you listened to the shows last week, you heard that I'm terrified of how bad this movie looks. I know that people say that a new movie in a series being bad doesn't make the original not exist or any less good, but you tell me that you could watch the original Star Wars trilogy with the same sense of wonder and enjoyment that you could before you saw the prequel trilogy. You can't tell me that with a straight face, because it's a lie. Taking an awesome movie and extending the story with a bad movie taints the original, be it ever so slightly, but it's tainted. Once the bad sequel is made, especially after 20 years of waiting, there's a certain bit of magic that's taken from the original. I just hope that in the new trailer, there's a little bit more to it, something that sparks a bit of hope in me, because I love the original Independence Day. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I don't want it ruined for me. I don't want the pedestal that I have that movie on to be ruined for me. Speaking of reboots or sequels way after they're due being made, here's a question for you, actually, and some of you might have an answer for this. Maybe I missed this. And they might actually drop this one, they just haven't announced it yet. Where is a trailer for the Ghostbusters reboot? We're literally, let's see, what is the release date for that? It's in June. We're literally 6 months out, and we have yet to see any... Wait, that's not even 6 months. We're 4 to 5 months out, and we have yet to see anything but a few set photos from the movie. For a property that big, you tend to at least have a teaser trailer by this point, but we haven't seen anything. I wonder if that's an indication of anything. I don't know, but tell me, what trailers are you most looking forward to? Are there any that I missed? Why do you think we haven't seen anything from the new Ghostbusters movie yet? Let me know by finding me on Facebook or Twitter at Mainstream Geek, or emailing me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com. What do we got? James Gunn announced that the post-credit scene for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 has already been written. This is a change from how Marvel's been doing things as of late. It used to be that the end credit scenes for Marvel movies were always made for a particular movie as part of a plan. But Marvel has gone through phase 2 without a lot of future thought to the end credit scenes, save for a few special circumstances where the movies in phase 2 need to be set up, and of course the tease for Infinity War at the end of Age of Ultron. The rest of them have been funny little tags, like having Howard the Duck give a quick little cameo at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, or revealing that the entire movie was just Tony Stark talking to Bruce Banner as a shrink. The last Marvel movie released was Ant-Man, and the end credit scene for that was simply a scene from Captain America Civil War that they had already shot, and it happened to fit in because Falcon and Ant-Man had met. I like the idea that Gunn has decided to add a bit of artistry to the scene by actually making it part of his movie in whatever way it is. We don't know anything about it yet, except that it's been written, we can assume, by him because he's the one that's revealing that, and that it probably has something to do with the expansion of Guardians of the Galaxy, but we don't know. He also let it out on Twitter that he has cast not only Star-Lord's father, but the villain for the movie. And those actors are... well, they're not saying. Kurt Russell's been rumored to play Star-Lord's father for a little while now, but that hasn't been confirmed. Though it's not far from the realm of possibility, if you ask me. Kurt Russell has had a bit of a resurgence in the past year with movies like Bone Tomahawk and Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. And we know that a trend in Hollywood has always been to take an established actor who is back on the upswing and give them a role in an established franchise. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kurt Russell is who would be playing Star-Lord's father in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. All we really know at this point is whoever Star-Lord's father is, it's not the same character that it is in the comics named Jason. Marvel is actually dropping a lot of news this week about casting that isn't forthcoming. During an interview with Collider, Mike Coulter, who plays Luke Cage and Jessica Jones in the upcoming Luke Cage series, listen to episode 2 of this podcast to hear my opinion on the Luke Cage series. But during the interview, Coulter said that they've already cast the actor who's going to be playing Danny Rand or Iron Fist in the Iron Fist series. He said, "The actor has been cast, but he's in a basement somewhere. When the time is right, they'll let him up and tell him where he is. So we have an actor cast as Danny Rand, Iron Fist. So maybe that Iron Fist series is closer than I thought. Whoever it is, though, will apparently make an appearance in the Luke Cage series. So we'll find out who our Iron Fist is no later than November when that series comes out." What do you guys think about James Gunn's announcement that the post-credit scene for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 has already been written? Who do you think will be playing Star-Lord's dad and the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Who would be your ideal actor to play Danny Rand in the Iron Fist series? Fill me in on Facebook and Twitter at Mainstream Geek, or email me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com. That's going to be it for this one. Make sure you visit mainstreamgeek.com. To see more news stories and find out more about the show, find me on Twitter and Facebook at Mainstream Geek. Email me at jason@mainstreamgeek.com. Make sure you subscribe to the Mainstream Geek podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or YouTube. Whichever one you use, please be sure you're leaving a rating and review of the show. That way it helps others find me. Look up my other podcast, Completely Straight, on iTunes and Stitcher, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Until then, keep it geeky.